Hello and welcome to Plus One to Gaming. I'm Chris.
And I'm Eric.
And I'm Mark.
And today we're going to talk about how to put D&D on your resume.
Someone literally just asked that on Reddit the other day.
Well, it's a topic that has a lot of search volume, but isn't really well written about.
I feel like it's meme. I see a lot of memes and stuff. There's some legit value there.
I just searched that, how to put D&D on a resume, and I see something from, it doesn't tell me the year, something in Reddit from 2015. Hiddenfrontdoor.org has one. Dungeonmastering.com from July this year.
Yeah, there are articles about it. It's just not like a very well written.
Wait, something was on LinkedIn. What is that? Putting Dungeon Master on your resume, LinkedIn, May 2021. So yeah, I wonder, there's a decent amount from this year. I wonder what happened to bring it back into the zeitgeist.
People going back to work, yeah.
Yeah.
And people have been playing D&D while they were in quarantine, and now they're getting back to work and they're trying to figure out how to make that time look productive.
People are like, wait a minute, this is just like Zoom meetings. How do I get people to pay attention? This feels like work.
That's interesting. Because like I read fucking 100 resumes a week. I playing D&D. So this is probably not going to paint me in a great light. If somebody put like recurring dungeon master or something on there, I'd be like, nerd. It would not make me think better of them.
Yeah, I think my take on that would be to, like everything else on a resume, hone it to what you're applying for.
Yeah.
And I think that starts by breaking it down. Like I wouldn't put DM'd a 5-year-long campaign. I would put the skills it took to do that rather than, and if they asked, we could get into it. But
managed a small group of like-minded individuals, blah, 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 blah.
Right. But then the trick is to not make it sound like it was work related. You know what I mean? Like they like managed a team of 7,
through stressful situations.
High risk, high reward outcomes.
Yeah.
Through death-defying antics.
Yeah.
So the
thing
follow-up
is like
disappointing because I feel like a lot of people will have that nerd reaction. So you don't want to pump yourself up and then have them be like, "Oh, tell me more about that." But like, well, actually, what's on my D&D game?
Well, a lot of the articles that I've seen on this, they basically spin what you do in D&D, and it's to me it's very misleading. And if you actually have a conversation about it, once it's revealed, you were when you said that you were referring to playing board games with your friends.
Yeah.
I think the most appropriate place for something like this is in that section of your resume where you might want to show your hobbies or something like that. And then you can kind of go into the value that you've created by like facilitating a collaborative storytelling, group with people, or there's some fun ways you can make that compelling. But I think that's probably the most relevant place to actually include that, if you actually include it anywhere on your resume.
Yeah.
It depends on the job too. Like if you're applying to be the head of, like a project that's experiential marketing, I would want to know, like, what's your table like? That could be good to know.
Yeah. Again, like I read probably 100 resumes a week. And I do, like, if you wrote something like led a team of da-da-da-da, like, I'm going to ask, like, oh, tell me about this. What did you do there? That's like my job. Yeah. I read resumes and ask questions. Tell me about this, is I say more than anything. I might be a like willing listener on that. I'm like, oh, cool. And because I'm familiar with the game, if I send you to my director of engineering, he's going to be like, oh, I don't want this person on my team. Like, this is weird. Like, I'd say my general advice would be don't. Yeah,
I agree with that. I'm going to highlight myself as an outlier because I actually do put it on my resume. But the thing is I'm in the creative space.
Yeah.
I work I dabble in video and audio and writing, graphic design. But that's my job. So being able to show creative outputs is important for me to
But that's
do
different. That's almost
yeah.
like a portfolio.
Yes. And in this sense, it's more of the podcast that I put on my resume, so that people can actually see, like all of the skills that go into it. I also put puppetry on my resume, and it's gotten me quite a few conversations. So it's more of like, I agree 100% that.
Well, in that case, I mean, DMing
is
is the less weird thing on your resume. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It says puppetry. Ask me about it.
And then underneath
enough.
that, it says also red herrings. I'm good at those.
Yeah.
Zing. But it's also to what you were saying, it's such a know your audience.
Yeah.
It's
Definitely.
you can, if you do it and you can hit the bullseye, it'll work for you and you'll get that conversation. But if not, it's a high risk, high reward type.
Yeah. Because like I think about like there's still like, even though it is like way more popular now than it ever has been, there's still a ton of stigma around it. And like it is high risk, high reward. You may get through me, but I'm going to know that like no one else at any other hiring manager I'm going to send your resume to, they're not going to be impressed.
And don't use it as a substitute for real experience. Not saying that playing these games aren't valuable. They are, but they are games. And if you're trying to use it as some kind of substitute, you're definitely not going to make the cut, no matter how creative you spin it.
I mean, we had a guy who put like youth football coaching or something on his resume, like you said, in the hobbies section. And like, I talked to him about it. Oh, tell me about that. What's your team? And like, but that is mainstream. Like everybody in my office knows how football works and they know it's not like either people summoning the devil or just like virgins in their mom's basement. Like the stigma, there are no stigmas with it that you have to overcome. Like this guy didn't end up getting the job, but not for that reason. But it didn't really help him. Like those hobby things, I don't know. I don't put them on my resume. A lot of times I ask that question, like, what do you do for fun? To get to know you, but I don't think they've ever helped somebody, to be honest. They have definitely hurt people. But it's not going to be like, if you don't have the skills because you do a thing that I like, it doesn't get you in. I mean, we interviewed a guy who does archery, brews mead, and plays board games, and we didn't hire him. And I'm like,
those are all three things that I want to hang out with you.
Like, exactly. It was for like a technical sales position, and I thought he was good. I liked him. But none of those won over anybody else because they're all pretty niche.
Yeah.
So no one saw that, like, literally the manager said, like, I don't want to have a beer with this guy. Like, and that was the like point. Like, if you have a salesperson, you have to like want to hang out with this guy. And I was like, oh, I do. But I'm not the deciding factor. Like when you get into those, you've got to play to a bigger audience on your resume for sure.
Unless, again, if it's a micro segment where that it's appropriate, I think at that point it's going to be obvious, though.
Yeah, and it could be, I don't know, it could be fun. I remember Mac talking about wanting to put but guild leader on his resume, and I had to like, dude, don't. Maybe like if you're applying for a computer store or a game store or something like that, like stuff like that'll work, because you're dealing with like-minded people who are going to understand not only what the thing is, but the work that goes into it. And you're not going to have to overcome those stigmas, which with almost any other place you are, like, and you're digging yourself a hole before you even get a chance to explain it. You're going to have to explain yourself. You're going to have to explain your way out of that hole. I don't think it's gonna help.
Yeah. So I think like the big takeaway is like when you're considering this, don't. I think is like just a good general gut check. Like,
yes.
And then the follow-up question is, okay, you want to put this on here. Why? Really? Mm-hmm. And this is a really hard question to drill down to because you're going to lean on your bias. You love this game. It's provided you with, all of this value in your life and you want to express that. But really what you're trying to do with this resume is start a conversation with an employer. And you have to be very selective and focus on the information you convey to do that. And is this blurb that's taking up precious space on this, quick handshake, this quick elevator pitch, is it really going to be enough and provide enough value into what you can contribute to the role? And is that worth, is that worth the time? Is that worth the space on there? And generally, it's not.
Yeah, another like pet peeve of people who read resumes, like if you're padding your resume so much that it's 4 pages long, like I don't want to read that. I have to read 100 resumes a week, basically. 1 page is excellent.
Yeah.
Boil that stuff down. So yeah, if you're taking up space with goofy shit, that again, I love this game, but it like in a professional setting, it's like you said, like why is it on here? I would and other hiring managers would question that. They would ask that question. Why is this here? This is wasting my time. Like, yeah, basically.
I think it's anything that informs, your life, your personality, your work experience in general is valuable. But I think to offer up a metaphor, maybe like if you're looking at your resume as a character sheet, like the part we're talking about is like the stat block.
Yeah.
Like don't mess with that. Like that is your work experience, what you've actually done. If you have statistics about your impact at work at your last job, include that. But you're also going to have more than likely a cover letter or a bio section. And I would suggest maybe looking at what it is you love and want to include in the value, anything hobby wise has brought to your life, and like reskinning it in a way to like say, I really appreciate collaborative work environments because I know that sitting down at a table with my friends to play D&D is really fun because we're all working towards a common goal. Mm-hmm. That's not a lie. That's totally true. I'm not inflating my work experience, but it's just like, it's part of my character. Like, yeah. So, and that's how I am at work too. I know I've learned over the years that if I can work with like a little team of people that are all working on something and can spitball ideas and stuff, that's more fun for me. So I look for those kind of jobs.
Yeah. And you know what? You could even, if it was something, if this was so core to your identity and you really wanted to share it up front, that cover letter, I think is a great way to do that, like you said. And your analogy was beautiful. Yeah. But you could even make that into a story. Like, hey, I'm not like your typical person. I love these collaborative games, and it's, kind of adding on to what you said, Mark, like this has also enabled me to really solve difficult situations and like problem solve collaboratively. And those are valuable things that employers are going to look for. And if you could turn that into a compelling story on your cover sheet, perhaps, that could be a compelling way to kind of embody that if it's really that important to you.
Yeah.
But
and if you are so into DMing and it's so much fun, then like just think about it like that. Maybe you got to write your bio, you got to sell the story, and just, keep it real if you want to. But I would do it in, like you were just reiterating, in the bio section, and kind of leave the work to speak for itself, because you don't want to have somebody have that realization like Eric was talking about, where they're like, oh, are you padding this out? Like that's lame, and we don't want that here.
Yeah. I mean, my boss is like ruthless with resumes. I'm much more forgiving than she is. But she will, I don't want to say like attack, but like she will drill down on stuff that she sees as like either padding or like contributed to saving the company. She's okay. What did you do specifically? Like you worked on a team that did this. Fine. What did you do? Not we. I don't want to hear we. What did you like? Mm-hmm. That and that kind of stuff. Like, well, in an environment where you're more than likely already going to be nervous, like having somebody come at you for something that like you thought, I don't know, you thought maybe you could squeak by. Like, I want to put that I'm got critical thinking and comprehensive, and I'm cool under pressure because of these. Like, they're gonna be cool. Tell me about a time when you did that. And in a work environment, and you're like, oh shit. Like,
yeah,
you can set yourself up a trap. I do think, again, like if you're applying to a place that you know you're going to be with like like-minded individuals, it can be a really cool, especially like Mark said, like, I mean, hell, Chris and I taken a little bit of a turn. When I first moved to San Diego, Chris and I worked on resumes for myself, before I was an HR professional.
Oh, I remember this days.
And I was applying for like being a manager at like a grocery store or something. So we made like an adventure map about my career, and like we put a ton of time into it, and it was really like, it was a fun project, and I did not get a call back.
I remember working on that.
And now as an HR professional who has to read if I saw that, I'd be like, what the fuck is this? Like, I might read it, but like, I need like really distilled information, because I got to read through these things pretty quick. And I think about that kind of a lot, because I'm like, this poor HR person had to like figure out like, why is this a treasure map? What is happening?
Yeah.
Back then, I was under the impression, I thought that you had to like do something so drastic and eye-catching and different and catch somebody's attention. And if you could do that, you get an interview at least.
Yeah. And like the case is like, reading resumes will look at that and go, oh, weird. Next. And I might, like I'll give it a read. I read all of them. Like, but if you don't have what I'm looking for, doing that thing isn't,
the format's not gonna be like, ooh.
Again, format can almost only hurt you. Like if you have a standard format, you are on par. If you have a wacky format, you are below, because now I have to figure out where shit is.
Yeah.
But if we were applying for like some kind of graphic design thing, like something like that would have like, okay, cool, you worked on this. So it is very situational, but I would advise against, like, I don't know. I see in a lot of resumes where they're like critical thinking, comprehensive skills, like works and fast paced. Like everybody writes that. I'm not going to ask about those generally, because I know that skills that you put on your resume are all just shit you saw on somebody else's resume.
Yeah, I think one overarching problem with resumes in general is that people continue to treat them like they're applying for college.
Yeah.
And it's like no one at a certain level, and in certain industries, there are exceptions, of course, like the flowery stuff at a certain point, like you said, it's extra work to sift through it. And you have someone who has 1,000 documents and 40 hours a week. So how much extra effort are you going to ask them to figure out, plug in your USB device so they can watch a video? Like, that's super cool. However, probably ineffective.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a guy who had a QR code on his, and it took me to like his website. And I'm like, you're applying for like an engineer. Like, this isn't even a portfolio. It's just a digital resume. I'm already looking at a digital resume. Like, cool that you did it, but it didn't help. I don't know. I'm sure there are other experts that would maybe disagree with me, but
if you can't dazzle them with your brilliance, baffle them with your bullshit.
I like that.
I mean, that's the risk you run. Like,
except
it's one of my dadisms from my dad.
From your dad.
Yeah,
that's funny. Except like, again, I mean, I've hired 100 people this year. I can like see through the bullshit.
Yeah,
and so can my boss, and so can every hiring manager. That like the first thing you want to do is have the skills for the job.
You're dealing with
professionals. The first thing you want to do is know somebody there.
Yeah, but like
to be a little more specific with what I was saying before, you just reminded me of my deeper point. I think is like when I said applying for college, it's like no one in jobs, I've come to learn at least, cares all that much about your potential to grow or anything, or like how much, even in creative realms that I've been in, like how much you can bring to the table. It's kind of like, what can you do right now? We don't really want to wait around. So
yeah,
I feel like that's a reason not to fluff things, because it's kind of like, well, that's really cool if you have critical thinking skills and you can plan something like a very elaborate and complicated plot over the course of years, how does that help me in my bottom line?
Yeah. I mean, 100%, because like, so my company is growing. We do not have a good training program, period, for any position. So I have to hire people that can hit the ground running. Like, I have to know you've done something similar and can do it again, and not, well, eventually I could use these skills to do. No, I need it. Like, we need it today. And it is like, it's not nice, but that's the way it is. And that's the way most employers are going to treat it.
Yeah. And that's a problem that I run into, because I like workflows and things.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with a lot of smaller companies and clients and stuff, that aren't like Coca-Cola level or whatever. So they don't have things like that necessarily. And sometimes they're very happy to have someone that, and other times it's like, no, I don't really care how anything gets done. Just do it in the background and hand me an end product.
Yeah.
Well, so we talked about a lot about not doing this at all. Just don't.
Okay.
Just don't. Let's take a pivot and talk about, okay, you've not heeded the elves' seldom given unguarded advice, and put this on your character sheet. Eric, since you are the expert, I think, in this, how would you go about, if you had to? How would you go about doing this? Putting this.
So I do think it's so hard for me to not just say don't do it.
I know.
If you have identified, like, this is if you're like applying to Wizards, like, if you're applying to a game store, like, this is your audience, do it. Like, because you are now going to be it shows that you can be a subject expert there. Like, okay, so let's say, again, I'm applying to like a game store, like where Chris and I used to play comic books, games in the back, stuff like that. I'm applying there. I would put this on my resume. So first of all, know your audience.
Okay, but so in that context, since that's like a good discrete example,
mm-hmm.
what type of information would you put on there to be valuable to that like market?
So I want to set myself up as knowledgeable, at least, if not like a product expert of the thing. So I would do it under hobbies. Again, don't try to sell it as like a job, like in your like work experience section of your resume. So hobbies, I don't know. I was going to say I would treat it exactly like the way that I like to treat like work experience, hobbies, dungeon master, years of experience, however long, 12 years of experience. And then a couple like bullet points, like led this team of 4 people through, 2 years of ongoing collaboration, whatever it is. Like, I don't know if I would like, I don't want to say like jump the shark, but like completely shift gears from like the professional part of the resume into like the hobbies part and change like the format and like the way that you talk about things. I would more than likely keep it like bullet pointed and like not even real sentences, types of like just like short businessy type sentences. That's how I would do it, at least. But because I feel like that could still, like, you're going to have the conversation. They're going to talk about it, especially if it's like-minded individuals.
Yeah, I guess in this sense, like being able to indicate that you are a subject matter expert in the product
mm-hmm.
is useful, because you're going to be talking to customers about the product. And maybe, like, who knows, perhaps even leading, in community events or in-store events or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yes. So that would be my goal in this section, because again, every part of your resume is in there to show them you can do this job. And that, like, I can talk to customers about not only, what's coming out today, but what came out 5 years ago, whatever. I've been in this world for a long time. I'm steeped in it. I know this product very well. I'm passionate about it, that kind of thing. So, like, again, not to get too far into my job, but like basically the 3 things I look for on a resume and a candidate is, can you do the job? Number 1. Will you fit in our culture? Number 2. And can you grow the position? Number 3. And number 3 is hard. Like, you basically have to talk to the person, but like, can you grow this position? So just like you said, Chris, I can lead internal games in the back. Like we can have events, things like that. Like that might not be what they were hiring for, but that's growing that position. Like that would have, if you had said that in an interview, I would have piqued my interest.
Do you think things like, because I'm always trying to include a lot of concrete things on resumes, even in hobby sections. How many years I've done it is one, but just especially numbers I feel like are good for people to latch onto.
Yeah.
But like, so would you say maybe like, oh, I've done 12 years through versions, like 2.5 to 5e, and like how many people were playing, or like cadence of sessions, like how far do you go?
I mean, I think I like the first two. Like, I've played from 2.5 to 5e. I've led tables of 3 people to 7 people, because it shows a variety of, like, if you're just playing 5e and you're just having 3 people, like, cool. But if we're having community games in the back, like they may want to play something different, and there's going to be a bunch of them. So I would show like my breadth of experience at that point, but keep it succinct.
Yeah, and that's easy to do. Like, from 2 to 2.5 to 5, spanning 3 to 7 players over 20 years. You've captured a lot of rich information in a very short nugget. I do want to circle back to something that Eric said in terms of those like 3. In terms of those 3 virtues. We just watched Mulan again last night, so that's fresh in my head. The virtues. And can you do the job? That first one. And I guess just circling back to our filter of whether or not you're going to include this on your resume, I can't emphasize enough of being able, you need to be able to translate how this experience is going to help you do the job in a compelling way. And if you can't do that, don't. But if you can, then I guess like I still want to continue exploring like what other types of things from this outside of like the hobby section and outside of applying to like some kind of game store or something where where the product knowledge is irrelevant.
Okay.
Are there some compelling ways to include some of the skill sets into your resume that helps you do the job? And I don't know if it would be helpful to be like, okay, and we're talking about a creative copywriter or copywriter, because that's like I would use it in that sense, and I have used it in that sense.
Yeah. So I think the easy way, and the way that I feel like a lot of people are going to like wink and nod and cheat, is like in your skills section, like I talked about a minute ago, like comfortable with deadlines, multitasking, creativity.
That's where a lot of mine comes in. I'm not gonna lie. That's where I hide a lot of mine.
And so the reason I say it's cheating is because I think that this, if I am looking at like what we're talking about as like a an assignment, like you need to put D&D in your resume and that's your homework, that's like the easy way to do it, because you're not like really calling it out. It's and you do develop skills, like again, math, like quick math, technical problem solving, analytical stuff, like sure. And if you tell me, if you have on your resume, like, I don't know, like good with like quick math, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. I'm not going to ask you why. So I feel like a lot of those are like under the radar. But that would be an easy way if you are struggling with that part of your resume, the skills part, which as a resume reader, I might be not doing my job well. I don't look at those. Not often. Some people will fucking throw a ton of things in there. And I'm like, can you drive a forklift? And they say, yes. I'm like, cool. Oh, it's on your skills section. It's buried in a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't really lend a ton of credence to those, because I know that those are kind of ephemeral. But if you're struggling with filling out that section, D&D, I think, is a great place to pull ideas from, because there are things you are good from here.
Can we list some? Let's list some.
Okay.
Improvisational skills.
Exactly. That was the one that I was thinking and couldn't think of the word because my improvisational skills aren't great.
So you got to level up. You can add that, so you can add that to your resume.
I mean, like collaborative problem solving.
Navigating difficult social situations.
Mark, you go.
Well, I feel like I would have been better at this before you convinced me not to put it on my resume at all.
Sorry for the first half of this being me telling everybody no and being a Debbie Downer.
You know what? I think there's a lot of excitement around this conversation of like, oh, it's so fun and cool and nerdy, like nerd chic to put in my resume. But like, if you actually look at it from a pragmatic standpoint, generally not a great idea. And
Yeah. I mean, so
I would go with like, in my case, or Krista's case, I would say that creative writing definitely comes into play.
Yeah.
I also think there's some level of, I don't know how to phrase it, but like empathy, like empathetical navigation.
High level of like,
oh, your boss don't give a shit about that.
No, they don't.
That's the last thing they give a shit about.
High emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I've been told I have that and I have a job, but I didn't put it on my resume.
I would phrase it exactly as running dungeons and role playing to remove all confusions.
So I pulled up a thing from LinkedIn, and I didn't read the whole thing, but I read the bolded words. And they talked about, we do the same for translating military skills on resumes. Something like community event organizer is great, and I 100% disagree. If you tell me you're a community event organizer, I'm going to ask you about that. Well, if you were
what the fuck were you organizing?
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I've been in the military and I did not organize.
Did you think of yourself as a community event organizer?
No, and I wouldn't view anybody that I worked with either in that. I would not lump them up in that either.
If I was hiring someone and they followed up with, I was in the military, that would seem so sinister.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, like, after we drone striked a hospital, the community had to organize to fix it. But if you were trying this for D&D, same words, community event organizer, and I was like, oh, cool. What events did you organize for your community? I had 3 of my friends over every other Sunday, and we played D&D. Wham! No, get out of here. Like, that is padding.
Yes. Yeah, you have to be able to back these up with tangible, real-world examples that are substantial.
I go with something like, creating. That's what I was trying to say. Like, it seems really well if you were going into like a marketing convention kind of. I could see that industry crossing over. Like, I know how to create engaging experiences,
immersive storytelling.
I know how to be immersive. I know how to lead, a group to an end. No, not to an end. Again, that sounds sinister.
An end?
I thought you said end. Like, yeah, going to Red Dragon Inn, celebrate our victory.
Listen, as a DM, even though I'm new, the one thing I know I can do is get my party to an inn.
Yes, we love inns.
They can find a tavern.
I'll read off some of the ones I have on my resume since I pulled it up. If that's...
Can we just yay or boo?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Brand building and storytelling.
Yay.
Yeah.
This doesn't really... Clear writing and communication. Multimedia production comes from the podcast. And also...
Nice.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Let's see. Innovative problem solving.
See, that's one that I would say, like...
We're going to follow up on.
I would never ask.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing.
When you innovatively problem solved.
I also don't think this will be your only example of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't go to a D&D. If somebody asked me about, hey, tell me about a time you problem solved innovatively, I would not pull a D&D example. I would pull a real life work example that I would explain.
Yeah.
And not use a D&D example. Team focused collaboration.
Real quickly though, you could always do it in reverse. If somehow you do bring up D&D, you can always say, I did this thing, which I could see being valuable in this position in X, Y, or Z way.
Yeah.
To try to sell them on the idea that it's relevant.
Yeah. So if there was a situation and you had the right circumstances and you had an in-game example of something that they asked, and you're like, you know what, it's actually funny. I played a game of D&D. If you'll humor me, I'm kind of a nerd, but this is what we do in our hobbies. There was a time we were presented with this really challenging situation, and even though it's a game, we treat it as if it's a real real experience. And this is how I went about, navigating that situation, and this was the result. And you can also like bring a little bit of light. Like, typically I wouldn't bring these fantasy game situations into a but I think it's like an interesting way to kind of share how I actually did something like that, or something to that effect.
Yeah, especially if it were some sort of conflict that had any IRL implications, or like those kinds of situations where people are having a conflict. I mean, you can frame it as being like, this is not a real conflict, but there was tension and I was responsible for working through that, so I stopped and did this, and because I'm going to want to be a manager at your bookstore, I think those kinds of things are relevant.
I like that, because so like, I also caveat, I do 20 interviews a week sometimes, so like, I do ask these questions a lot. I will ask people because I'm looking for, again, can you do the job? That's number one. Second is, will you fit in here? And that's a lot of times as important, if not more important. I ask, like, what do you do for fun? I do want to know about people. You have to be in the interview stage for me to ask that, though. And a lot of times people will talk about, like, I hike, I surf, I hang out with my kids, I do this. Again, I think about like the football coach guy, because it's something that is different from the kind of standard things that everybody says on those, which none of them to me are super interesting. You hang out with your kids, great. I don't care about your kids.
I love hiking, but how's it going to help me when I'm hiring you?
Yeah. So again, though, that's for more like personality. Are you going to fit in? We have a ton of people that hike. I mean, I guess we have a ton of people with kids, but I don't have them, so I'm not empathetic. Like, people talk about surfing. Cool. We have a surfing club at my work. We have a climbing club. We have a pretty active core of young engineers and people that work there. You're going to fit in. But if the coach, I asked, awesome. That's so what skills have you learned coaching that you think apply here? I've asked that exact question. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for somebody, if I ask you, what do you do for fun? And you're like, well, I have a weekly Dungeons and Dragons game with my friends that, I prepare all week for, and we play every Sunday or whatever. Cool. That sounds really neat. Tell me about that, blah, blah, blah. What skills do you use there that would translate here? That is a question that I have specifically asked somebody, and is not out of the realm of possibility to be asked. So that, I think, is a great way to bring in these types of to kind of back channel. You're not throwing it up front, but if you're going to bring it up, you should have a way that it applies.
Yeah, and there's so much rich things to pull from if that conversation sparks. Organization, commitment, punctuality, time management, people management, conflict management. There's so many different skills you can pull based on the position you're talking about or applying for. And then you just always, I think as long as you're always bringing it back to the role and the value you can bring to that role through these experiences, then it's fair game.
Yeah. To circle back on the skills, my resume, my skills are all talent acquisition, full cycle recruiting, innovative sourcing, interviewing and negotiation, client relations, database management, and written and verbal communication. They're not interesting. They're not fun, but they are key parts of the positions that I'm applying for or was applying for.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've gotten feedback on the skills part of mine, and we saw this on your resume and it piqued our interest.
I mean, shit, sometimes that happens. I have reach out to somebody from one single thing on their resume.
Yeah. I think I need to pare mine down. But I don't know. I think that you have to find a nice balance.
Yeah.
On that. All right.
Yeah,
Well, I
I
think
think-
we. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the big takeaway I'm getting is that, like, it's a multi-tier process. Your resume is, or, application that is blind. So you don't really get the chance to be super salesy, So to me, it's kind of like you don't want to roll deception. Like you want to roll persuasion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You've been
the
killing
only
these
way you can do
analogies
that
today, Mark.
Thanks. The only way to do that is like you got to get to the interview. So like don't fluff, be straightforward. You don't have to hide your personality if it's important to you, but be persuasive, not deceptive.
Yeah, I agree. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to view it. You're not gonna, even if you do get your foot in the door using that approach, typically you're gonna get weeded out.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's always the caveat that if you're a bard, it's performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that case, you can do something crazy like make an adventure map because you're probably applying to like a creative field.
Yeah.
It was Trader Joe's.
Like that might work for ABC. I don't know about Trader Joe's.
Yeah, it didn't work for Trader Joe's.
Yeah. All right. So I've already got it on my resume, or at least I have the podcast on my resume. Moving forward after having this conversation, let's take a quick poll, even though I think I know where it's going to fall. Mark, are you going to put D&D? Is D&D going to creep its way into your resume?
No, probably not. With a asterisk, because what I do, I don't do a lot of job applications anymore.
Yeah.
And then B, a lot of what I do is more along the lines of like requests for proposals. And in those cases, if I were working on something that was like a long-term marketing campaign, I might bring up the fact that, I have some experience with collaborative long-form projects with an end goal that we don't know how to get there, but we're going to get there together. I think that would be my pitch.
Nice. Eric, did the needle move in any direction for you on this topic?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm looking at my resume now, and I don't even have hobbies on here. I have education, membership, and professional development, skills, and experience.
Consummate professional.
I mean, I listed my skills earlier. That would be the place I would put it. But like the positions I was and would be recruiting or looking for, like I'd need to shout out, like I have specific technical, like so I work in HR, and HR is a lot of soft skills, but I feel like the technical skills or the hard skills are the ones I want to highlight more. If I wanted to highlight soft skills, I could do the cheap thing I said earlier and put some in the skills section. To give even more context, no one at work knows I play Dungeons and Dragons.
You closet D&D, are you?
I am a closeted. And not to go on more, but like our generation, like millennials, it's not stigmatized, but like even Gen X, like from what I've seen, like I was at a happy hour and one of my buddies there is like a programmer and he's right around my age. And he said like, I'm going home because we have a board game night. And another manager who's Gen X is like, you guys playing fucking Monopoly? And like, it was just so strange because I was like, I understand exactly what this guy's doing because we've been doing it for decades.
Yeah.
And the Gen Xers, like, you play board games? Board games are boring. So like there is, and God forbid like a like somebody older, like a boomer, be there. Like they're just not going to get it. So no,
yeah, it's like game night was like forced family fun of infinite rounds of Sorry or playing Risk with your dad, where he dominates you for like a whole game that takes 3 hours. 3 hours?
You'd be lucky for 3 hours in Risk.
Well, that's the first night, and then he leaves it on the kitchen table, and you have to do it Sunday as well.
So I don't know. Yeah, again, if I were applying for something specific, yeah, I would put it on. But I would think very critically on I liked the question you raised earlier, like, why is this on here? I would think very hard about that.
Yeah, as you should every line of your resume.
Yes, my resume is 1 page and it goes back to 2007.
Yeah, I need to go back and prune mine a little bit, but I'm also not looking to apply for any
Exactly.
jobs.
I had to look up my this is before I got my current job. I was like, this is an old version, but
yeah.
No, I would not put it on.
Yeah, there's definitely some skills that I could say like, oh, those apply to D&D, but I actually, I didn't pull from D&D to put anything, at least in terms of skills on this. The podcast I have, actually, this is what I wrote. I'd be curious to hear, Eric, especially your opinion on it, of like, because I think it communicates, or I tried to communicate what I want to communicate, but essentially, +1 to gaming, head creative wizard, because you have to have a cool title. +1 to gaming is a passion project exploring collaborative storytelling experiences. It combines my personal interests with a range of creative and marketing skills to create a brand focused on delivering actionable value to its audiences.
So if I were hiring a marketing person and I saw that, I would be intrigued.
And that's the goal. That's
the goal. I would ask questions about that.
And then there's a link to the website for someone to click through so they could see what it's about. And I'm proud of the website. I'm happy with what we do. And and I'm proud of our content.
I mean, I more than likely, if I saw that, if I'm looking at your resume, I'm hiring a marketing person or something in that vein. Like, again, your both of your jobs do cater more toward this type of thing. Like, I have to show that I have database management like experience and like have my Excel certification on like stuff like that.
But I think it just
I would click on the website though. I would definitely check it.
And I think it underscores the heart of the discussion. It's like, it really just depends. And it is so circumstantial on the role that you're trying to, and the audience that you're, writing for. Cause there might be some jobs, if I was going to, like a copywriter for a, high profile bank, this would not be on here.
Yeah. They're not going to.
Yeah. But like I had a friend from school who went on at a certain point, he was working at an agency that had Taco Bell as a client, and he was a copywriter for their digital. And part of how he got that job was the crazy sketch comedy that he was doing in college, which was, for our like comms 101 classes and stuff is where he started. But like the absurdist kind of Rick and Morty-ish stuff that he was into, and that like transition from rando 2000s internet humor to like the marketing space. Like he was in a niche and leveraged it, and then was writing like crazy descriptions for new Mountain Dew flavors or whatever that were just like funny and ridiculous about your mouth getting punched with, a fistful of lemons and just weird stuff.
Yeah.
I think it also that highlights, get a lot of different experiences, explore your passions, explore your talents and hobbies. And you never know when they're going to be able to, especially in today's marketplace where, our generation and the generations coming, after us have to be more diverse in our skill sets.
Yeah.
I think it's just really cool when you can find, then you are able to start uncovering your unique niche.
Yeah. And have a pivot. Like, for instance, if somebody clicks through and looks at the podcast and the website, you now have an opportunity. You don't have to talk about D&D. You can talk about your experience with web platforms, your experience with audio editing.
Yeah. Well, in the role that I'm in now, because we do this podcast and we have efficiencies and just like a level of comfortability with it. Like, I do the podcast for our company, or took it. And so like, that was one thing that helped me get the job, which is nice. So again, but you really got to know the role that you're applying for. Like, I don't know, there's so much, but I feel like we've covered this topic a lot more than I thought we would.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's really anything else I have to say on the subject. Do you guys have anything else to add?
No, I don't think I do. I thought I did, but I might just be reiterating things that we've said 10 times.
Mark, you got anything else?
Nope. Just, As always, be strategic in all things, especially when communicating with humans. Yeah.
Weirdly specific.
Yes. But appropriate since your business is a human person.
Yeah.
Communicating with humans is one of the riskiest things you'll ever do as a human. So
it really is. Well, I
be
mean,
careful.
like the bulk of my work is writing and writing for people. And you just like, when I'm stressing over every word a lot of the times, or just really trying to create, the right sentiment or the right, and then even still you have everyone's unique perspectives and interpretations of what you write. So, it's in this type of arena where you have a very limited amount of time and space to get somebody's attention, to really just get in the door to have a conversation. Focus and intention are going to be key to communicating your value. And I guess you got to be really discerning of how much D&D is really a part of that.
Yep, I think you're totally right.
So those are our hot takes on how to put D&D on your resume. But what do you think? Is D&D going to make its way onto your resume, or are you going to leave it off? Let us know at +1togaming.com or send us a tweet at +1togaming on the Twitters. Stay tuned for next week as we jump into a critical review of our favorite Bounty Hunters divisive series, The Book of Boba Fett. We'll also be live streaming our discussions and live plays on Twitch from now on, so if you want to tune in live, follow us at twitch.tv/+1togaming. Until then, thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.